It is total anarchy in the streets right now.
Others have been injured as rioting youth started throwing rocks at police.
There's an unjust law is no law at all.
Historic St. John's Church set under fire.
God.
Is this a war going on here?
We're really talking about our future. What type of country do we want to be?
Hello and welcome to Holding the Line, America's fight for religious freedom. You know, we've done a number of interviews with interesting people exploring this topic. And we had the pleasure to meet up with Pastor Alan Stewart of Rechobeth Baptist Church in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. It's northeast of Chattanooga. And Pastor Stewart has served there since December of 1999. You know, it's clear that since the age of 10, when he accepted Christ, that Alan had a zeal for the Lord, unafraid to speak boldly about this faith. Well, that boldness got him in trouble by the atheists. Let's meet Alan and let him tell you a little about his church and the community of Soddy Daisy.
Soddy Daisy is a very rural community, but it's growing and changing as the growth of Chattanooga is coming out to this end of the county. Soddy Daisy is a very tight-knit community, as most rural counties are. I mean, I've jokingly said that in Soddy Daisy there's no such thing as a family tree, it's just a root, you know, because somewhere everybody's related to everybody. But it's a very tight-knit community, very close. For the most part, Soddy Daisy in my lifetime has been a spiritual community. I mean, a lot of churches in Soddy Daisy of every denomination. I would say the vast majority, overwhelming majority are Christian. You know, and I know even in a community like this, there are still some people who are atheists. I know of a handful, but they are not anywhere close to the majority in a community like this.
Great. Now you've probably got a pretty good idea what this town is like. Now, no matter where you live, the events of September 11th, 2001 made an impact on you. Every year, we pause to remember the victims and the heroics of that day, vowing to never allow it to happen again. And Alan's story centers around 9/11 and the anniversary of that tragic day.
I was invited to come and speak at a 9/11 memorial tribute, is what the school called it, and they had been having this for several years. And as I thought about it, again, this was September 11th of 2013. The senior class that year that I knew were going to be standing out in front of me, they were toddlers on September 11, 2001. The youngest of the middle schoolers I knew were not even born when it occurred. So when I thought about, you know, what was going to be my topic, how I wanted to talk to the students on that day, I wanted to just share, actually from the historical perspective, what happened on that day. Again, considering that a lot of these students weren't even born, others of them were just toddlers and probably had no memory whatsoever. And so what I shared that day was the historical reality of what happened. For example, you'll recall that after that occurred, the members of the House of Representatives, the senators, they all get together on the steps of the Congress there. They sing a cappella, "God Bless America." And as I share this story, again, I didn't write the song, I didn't sing it. I was only sharing what happened historically on that day, but I said God. And that was one of the references that I said to God. Also shared how our President George Bush shared a prayer before our nation, and he prayed to God. And so again, I used the word God. I did not preach a sermon. First of all, I spoke for 7 minutes. And no pastor would ever call that a sermon, because we can't even do the welcome in 7 minutes at a church. And so, you know, it wasn't a sermon. It was not, there was no evangelistic call. There was no altar call. I did pray. I did pray at the end. And however, ever since September 11th of 2001, every year the President has issued a proclamation from George Bush to Barack Obama, and I'm sure that President Trump will do the same this year. They issue a proclamation of days of remembrance, and they call upon the people of our nation to pray during those days surrounding September 11th. And so I honor the proclamation that was given by our president, and I did pray.
You know, in times of a crisis, we always turn to experts who know what to say and how to say it. And pastors speak regularly to crowds and always know how to offer hope. Pastor Stewart, a longtime member of this community, he was trusted. He was asked to speak at an occasion that has always had elements of faith in it. But when the Freedom of Religion Foundation found out about Alan, they sent him a letter, and it wasn't very happy.
According to their letter, they said that there was one person who evidently had called them with a complaint. You know, that this pastor had mentioned God in a public school setting and that he did pray. And so it was one person is all that we understood from the letter that they sent. The response that was given to the Freedom from Religion from the attorney of the Hamilton County Board of Education was that they were going to do training with all the principals and assistant principals to teach them, you know, what they're supposed to do and not to do as they bring guests in who would be speakers in the school. The responses that I received out of all those that came, and I had responses from all 50 states, I mean from everywhere. And what happened, the story was picked up on the AP wire, and I'm not sure exactly how that occurred. But within a day, you had the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times. I mean, these major newspapers picked it up in one day, and they tell the story. And the phone calls started coming in from everywhere, and emails from all over the place. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. And the responses I was hearing was like, Pastor, thank you for taking a stand. We've wondered how we needed to address these kind of issues. We see it happening all the time. We didn't know what to do. Thank you for giving the response that you did. There were, out of those over 3,000, there were 5 or 6 negative responses. And I took that with a grain of salt. I mean, you can expect you're going to always have some negativity somewhere. But those kind of responses were so overshadowed by the positive that came in from organizations, schools, colleges. I mean, I heard from people that I would have never got to have known any other way in life, but I was able to meet them through the process of what happened and how that story spread.
You know, Alan had reached out to me when my story hit the airwaves. He was very encouraging. And in fact, he does this on a regular basis. He encourages others that are threatened over their religious freedom. Here's what he does.
Well, for some reason, even as a young man, God had just put it in my heart. I had a love for my country. And I minored in American history in college. And I love the story of how this country came together. And for some reason, it's just been in my heart since I was 18. I've kept files of every Supreme Court decision that affected faith in any capacity, whether it was prayer, it was Bible reading, in any capacity, whether it was in a school setting, but whatever, I've kept files of those things. And so there are quotes and things that I have kept that for some reason, I felt it was going to be important, that one day I was going to need these things. And so as I see the Freedom from Religion, the ACLUs, and the other atheistic groups that send out threatening letters and try to intimidate people, I do my best to try to reach out, if nothing else in email, to the individuals that are being threatened and just let them know, based on their case, I'll pull quotes from things that are similar to what they're dealing with, just to give them encouragement that you've got something to stand on. And I give them the information to the legal groups that are willing to come alongside and support them and encourage them and defend them in what they're dealing with. Because when it happens to you, you're kind of overwhelmed and you really are intimidated. Whenever you receive a letter from someone who says they're an attorney and there's a threat there that there could be a potential lawsuit, no one likes to receive those kind of things. But to know that there's somebody out there that can help you and give you wisdom, to know how to navigate your way through that minefield, it's encouraging. And so I do my best just to encourage people. And I realize the vast majority of them very rarely ever respond. And I think it's because they're so overwhelmed. There's fears of not knowing who you are and what you might really want, what your agendas. And but I just want to reach out and encourage people, and I give them as much information as I can in an email to let them know, you've got a leg to stand on, don't be afraid, and here's some people you can contact that'll help you so that you'll know how to fight this fight.
While Alan walks the walk and encourages others attacked for their religious freedom, he did recognize one group who should be doing more.
One of the things that I was disappointed with, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I'm a rural pastor of a smaller church. This is not a mega church. We don't have a TV ministry. I honestly was hoping and thought that there would be some pastors who had some national attention, guys who had strategic churches and strategic pulpits, that one of those guys would say, this guy is a small country church pastor. I'm going to come stand alongside him. I'm just going to join him in the fight. I'm going to come stand. And basically what I heard and received was, I got the encouragement, but it was, you go get him, Tiger. And there was no one that was willing to come stand alongside. It was like, we support you in prayer, but we're going to stay here and we'll let you fight the battle. And that part of it was a little bit disheartening. And to be honest with you, the principal of the school, this was a struggle for him as well. He would become after this event a member of my church. He was not prior to this event, but after he became a member here. And I remember when it hit the news media and it took off across the country, and I mean, people were trying to get into the school to do interviews, and he's not allowed to do those things without the permission of the Hamilton County Board of Education. And I remember in the heat of that, he asked me the question in a text message. He said, "Where are the pastors? Where are the pastors?" And it was just me and him that were in the midst of the battle. And I think there is a place where a lot of people do think, it's your fight, it's your battle, it's been brought to you, you're the one that needs to fight this. But you need the encouragement of the body of Christ, of others who would be willing, when they see these things happen to somebody, to stand with them, to write them encouraging emails, and to do things that will keep them in the fight, because it is very overwhelming.
Pastor Stewart, ever concerned about others and the next generation, sees these attacks as a discouraging trend if they continue.
It looks like they're losing today. I mean, on paper, you would say that they were losing if they lose 78% of the time when they go to judgment. But where they're winning is they're writing these letters of threat enough. I think there was a quote that John Kennedy said one time, if you tell a lie long enough, eventually the people will believe it. And they have threatened and threatened and threatened. So you've got this younger generation that's coming up in middle school, high school, and college today, that they see these stories constantly in the news, that it's wrong to pray in a school setting, it's wrong to read the Bible. And so they've heard this over and over and over. The next generation, they're growing up to think, we can't do those things. And so that's where they're going to win. They're sowing the seeds today, and they're willing to lose the court case, knowing that they're going to get a generation of kids. The concept of freedom, it begins spiritually. And to give you a simple definition of freedom, I would say it is life. That's what freedom is, it's life. Because the opposite of that, when there is no freedom, there is bondage. And where there is bondage, there is just existence. It's not life. And so as you think about our country and how it was formed and the freedoms that we have, 1776 is the year that we put our finger on when this nation was formed and birthed. But the years prior to that, beginning in the 1730s into the early 1770s, the United States was going through what is known spiritually as the Great Awakening, when great men of God were traveling across the country and they were bringing fire from God as they preached, and there was conviction, and there was lives that were changed. And so character was being established, righteousness in the heart of men who were going to be the leaders of our country. And so as they sat down then to pen the Declaration of Independence, when they worked on the amendments, these issues came from hearts that were righteous and they were pure. And so to me, this concept of freedom doesn't mean that you have the privilege to do what you want. It means you have the responsibility to do what's right. That's what freedom is. Because freedom is then linked to character. And when a people lose their character, they lose freedom. And I mean, you think about this, when a child is born, a child has absolutely no freedom. I mean, somebody else carries them wherever they go. They make decisions for them. They tell them what to wear. But as the child begins to grow, he develops character. And with character then comes responsibility and trust. We give to them as parents. They earn the trust because of their character. But, however, once you give a set of keys to a teenager who's earned the trust for a parent to give those things to them, once they then go with that freedom and they become irresponsible, they lose freedom. And so that's what I'm seeing with our nation, is when our character, we begin to lose character, we begin to lose freedom.
You know, as a pastor, I know Alan Stewart would be able to help me with understanding freedom in a biblical sense. So I decided to ask him how we live as free people in a free nation and keep ourselves from becoming captives or slaves to false ideas.
If you go back and do some history search there, you'll see they were almost voting on every single word of the First Amendment. Not just the whole phrase itself, every word, to make sure they were getting it right. But I want you to listen to what a fear that he had. He had a fear that the words might be taken in such latitude as to be extremely hurtful to the cause of religion. And he said this amendment be made in such a way as to secure the rights of religion, but not to patronize those who profess no religion at all. And so here is a founding father, as they're putting together the First Amendment, who's got a fear that one day there'll be somebody who will read this and they'll do exactly what we're seeing done with the groups like Freedom from Religion and other atheistic groups. That was his fear as they were trying to choose the perfect wording for the First Amendment.
Alan's also my hero because he wrote back to the Freedom of Religion Foundation. They asked for an apology. They didn't get it. Alan said he wrote the letter, sat on it a couple days, prayed and fasted, and then sent it off. I asked him to read a little bit of that letter.
This is the letter that I wrote to the Freedom from Religion Foundation. In response to their letter, they demanded that there would be an apology and a response. And so on October the 1st of 2013, I sent a letter to Andrew Seidel, their staff attorney. I said, "Dear Mr. Seidel, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Alan Stewart, and I'm the senior pastor of Rechobeth Baptist Church in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, just outside of Chattanooga. Our church membership is just over 700 and one of more than 46,000 Southern Baptist churches across America with 15.9 million members. The reason for my letter is to address the multiple objections made by the Freedom from Religion Foundation organization regarding prayer at school functions in our regional area, and one in particular which involved me personally. I am of the strong opinion that the actions of the Freedom from Religion organization are unconstitutional based on Justice Tom Clark's declaration in the Supreme Court decision in the 1963 case, School District of Abington Township versus Shemp. And here was the quote: "Secularism is unconstitutional, preferring those who do not believe over those who do believe. It is the duty of government to deter no-belief religions. The state may not establish a religion of secularism in the sense of affirmatively opposing or showing hostility to religion, thus preferring those who believe in no religion over those who do believe." And I said, based upon this declaration and the fact that Freedom from Religion has repeatedly used misinterpreted rulings by the Supreme Court as the basis for their intimidating demands, it is both right and proper that every school district, superintendent, principal, teacher, staff, and student affected by those actions receive an apology. My desire is to ensure our educators are able to use their professional training, life skills, and experience to enrich and equip their students for life without the fear of retaliation and suppressing the dictates of their own conscience. Now, and I don't know that this necessarily is something you'd want to know, but I'm 52. And there's a story out of my own life that made such a difference. It was one of the turning points of my life for where I am today. When I was 2, my biological father deserted our family. And I still have memories from 1.5 years of age that I can remember things. And I remember my mom going to the cabinets and there was absolutely no food. There was nothing that was in the house. Our father left us with no food, no money. And so as you then fast forward a few years into my life, I'm in the 2nd grade at Soddy Elementary School. And it's beginning to overwhelm my heart that my life is going nowhere. I've just had that support of a father. I didn't see him again until I was 30 in life. And I'm sitting there in the class, and I'm on the front row, right in front of the teacher's desk. The teacher was Miss Myrtle Truella. And my heart was so overwhelmed, I just began to cry. And Myrtle Truella got up from behind the desk, and she saw this. All the other kids we were working on a project, so the room was very quiet. And she saw that I was crying. She knew my story. And she come and got me by the hand, and she walked me around her desk, and she sat down, set me up in her lap, and she put her arms around me and just pulled me close. She laid her chin on my shoulder, and in my ear, she whispered the first prayer I'd ever heard anybody ever pray in my life. And she just simply held me and cried with me and prayed. And I know that in school there's reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's the main things that you go to school to learn. But there are some things that teachers ought to be able to teach you, and they are from the life skills. I mean, you can have all these other things of education, and they are important. I'm not trying to minimize that. But that teacher gave me something that day that is still stuck with me to this moment in my life. And today, I had an opportunity where I was invited last year to be a part of a board. I sat on this board, a panel they called it. And there were Hamilton County commissioners, the county mayor, all these people are on the front row of the audience. And I shared this story. And I said, but you know what you do to her today? You fire her. You fire her. And that lady put something into my life. She put an investment into my life that reading, writing, and arithmetic was not going to put in me. And it's just sad that teachers are intimidated back into corners to where they're afraid. And I think that, for me, I think there was a place throughout American history. The atheists have always been around. This is not something new. You go back to Mary Madeline O'Hare. She's kind of the one who got a lot of this started. But even before her, there were atheists. And there was a time when they pushed the shoulder of the church. The church never flinched. The church was strong. And there was a time then somewhere in the 60s to early 70s, they pushed the shoulder of the church and she flinched. She moved. And I think that's what has given them such a militant agenda, is they feel like that they have now found a weakness. They found an Achilles heel in the church. I don't fault the government for where we're at today. I fault the church. I think it lays at the doorstep of the church what we're dealing with. The church has always been the one who had the voice, and we had a voice that had authority behind it. And the church is compromised. And so now we're losing our voice in the marketplace, we're losing it in the public square. The truth is, right now they say they just want us to have our voice inside the walls of a church. Eventually, that's going to be challenged. In fact, it's already being challenged. Was it in Houston, where the mayor had requested, all the sermons from all the pastors in the area. And if I remember the story right, the mayor there is a lesbian. And so she wanted to see what they were saying about homosexuality and same-sex marriage. And so it's a matter of time until that battle is going to come and we're going to face persecution the way they do in other nations, unless we're able to take the right kind of stands and do it in the right way and get God behind us again.
Pastor Alan Stewart is still pastor at this church in his community. We are still in for a long fight to secure our rights to freely practice our faith, and small-town pastors like Alan will be right there doing their part. The fight continues, and you need to be informed. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And like this video, and see more content coming your way. You can also read my book, Holding the Line, America's Fight for Religious Freedom. It's available on Amazon. Thanks for joining me, and keep holding the line.